Welcome to Market Access today. Please get ready to be captivated by expert insights and explore new frontiers. Traditionally, I want to thank ECONiX for their unconditional support. So now let's get started. Today, I have Anja Pownell with me. Welcome, Anja. She has extensive experience in MedTech Germany. And in the upcoming videos with Anja, we are aiming to cover topics like possibility of confidential prices coming to Germany and digital transformation as well. So please stay tuned. And now I want to give the floor to her to tell us more about herself, please. And in the meantime, could you please share your career journey? Specifically, how did you end up in market access?
Hello, and thanks for inviting me to this video series. So how did I end up in market access? It's probably how most people end up there, which is not intentional. So I definitely didn't set out to end up in market access. Frankly, I didn't even know what it was when I started. But I did study biochemistry, and I did that in Germany. And then I also went for 1 year to Sweden. And when I was there, I decided I want to finish my undergrad studies in England because I wanted to publish my dissertation in English because I thought it would be more accessible to everyone. So I ended up in Liverpool, and there I joined a great lab, which then offered me a PhD position. So again, I stayed on in the UK, and I ended up graduating from Oxford. And at that point, I also realized I don't really want to stay in academia and want to find something that's probably a bit more compatible with work life and have a life, a balance. So at that point, I looked into consultancies, and I found that there are some consultancies focusing on healthcare or pharmaceutical industry, because I still wanted to use some of the knowledge that I gathered from working in cancer research and biochemistry. I didn't want to leave that all behind. And they're quite active in Oxford, the consultancies recruiting there. So I came across a really great consultancy who took me on without any knowledge on market access. I'm very grateful to them to give me that chance. And that's really when I first started there, that opened up my eyes to the hurdles that a drug actually faces when you think of getting into the patient's hands. So naively beforehand, I thought, oh, we're working in a lab and we find something that might work and help patients. So surely if it works, then clinicians would use it and prescribe it to their patients, and there's no problem there. But really, when I started working in consulting, I realized the hurdles and all the problems, and that market access really does exist. So everything about market access and pricing reimbursement, I learned there. I learned on the job. So I spent 8 years there, and I started from a researcher, went all the way to associate director, and then I left because I was on maternity leave. And when I had my first child, I realized I wanted a job that is offering more flexibility, not really the 9 to 5 work. So I started out freelancing, and it's been working really well. And yeah, I've been doing that for 2.5 years now, and I'm really enjoying the flexibility and the different people I work with as a freelancer, as an independent consultant.
Thank you very much for sharing your journey so frankly. So I fully agree, or maybe I say that most of us just finding ourselves in market access without knowing. So hearing almost the same thing from you is also should be inspiring for the people who will be trying to find their way through healthcare. Second question will be specifically to Germany healthcare market. What are the most significant trends impacting Germany's healthcare market access and pricing in 2024 and beyond?
Yeah. So I'm not sure if we can call it a trend necessarily. What is definitely happening is a lot of cost containment measures being introduced. So we've seen that in the last 2 years, in 22, 23, there were some laws introduced to really limit the cost or bring down the cost and the prices of drugs. So we've seen, for example, the GKV Finanzierungsstabilisierungsgesetz. It's quite a mouthful, but a law that was introduced in 22, and then also a law introduced in 23, the ALVBBG. And both of them have some implications for drug prices. So some of them are positive for the manufacturers of these prices. So for example, for pediatrics, we've seen that manufacturers are allowed to increase their prices by up to 50% once. And those pediatric medicines will also not be subject to reference prices, for example. So they really want to make it attractive for manufacturers of pediatric medicines to be able to have their products on the German market and really increase the attractiveness of the German market. And they've done something similar for other drugs, which they call are supply critical, because we've seen some shortages in the past years, and they really want to avoid any shortages on critical drugs or pediatric medicine. So also the critical drugs manufacturers can increase the prices once by up to 50%. And then also for reserve antibiotics. So antibiotics are obviously also very important in healthcare, in treating conditions. So for those products as well, they have said that the price that's freely chosen when a product is launched on the German market, normally it's applicable for the first 6 months, but for the drugs that are reserve antibiotics, they can maintain that price beyond the 6 months. So there are really some ideas that are actually attractive to manufacturers. But then there were a lot of new laws as well that really made it unappealing or less attractive for the German market. And again, we've seen some consequences of that. But probably the biggest ones are this idea that now this reimbursement price, or not the idea, it's actually in case now that the reimbursement price applies from month 7 onwards. So before that was for 1 year, you had free pricing, and then the reimbursement price that was negotiated applies. Now that's already starting at month 7. So that means half a year of less free pricing for manufacturers than it was before. There was also a big change for orphan drugs. So previously we knew that orphan drugs, they always undergo an abbreviated assessment. So you can submit data that is not comparative and at least get a not quantifiable additional benefit in Germany. That is still the case. But as soon as the orphan drug sales, the annual sales, within any 12-month period, they exceed 30 million. So that threshold was lower. Previously it was 50 million. Now it's 30 million. As soon as there are more sales than that, the product has to undergo a full assessment requiring comparative data. So again, that's another hurdle that was introduced for orphan drug manufacturers. Then there are even more cost containment. So for products that are used in combination as well, and we see a lot of them, for example, in cancer and oncology treatments, if they're used in combination, then on top of this negotiated price, the manufacturers have to give an additional 20% discount for the combination. So again, that can have a big impact on the prices that you can actually achieve in Germany. And then another one is the price moratorium. So that's a really weird word, but that has also been around for years, which basically means that reimbursement prices can't be increased. So manufacturers can still increase their prices, but the reimbursement price stays the same. So the difference would have to be covered by patients or insurance funds on a case-by-case basis. And this has been now extended to 2026. It has been around for many, many years. So there are chances that it will get extended again beyond 26, which again makes it less attractive for manufacturers to have products on the German market because you can't really change the prices. And if you started out with a price that you were not happy with, you can't really do anything about it. But probably even bigger than all of the ones that I've mentioned is this new law, which is a really strict link between the additional benefit outcome and the price you can achieve. So only for products that have a major or a considerable additional benefit, there is free pricing. For all the others, the price is really strictly linked to that of an appropriate comparator. And that comparator quite often is the most economical, as they call it, which basically just means the cheapest comparator that there is. And then your price can only be maximum the same, maximum price parity, or depending on the outcome, it even has to be below that, maybe 15% or so below that. So that really means there's a lot of pressure to get a considerable or a major additional benefit, because for all the other outcomes, the price cannot be more than that of a comparator therapy. And a comparator might be, for example, best supportive care or some chemotherapy options that are quite cheap. So really that makes it not attractive to manufacturers to introduce products in Germany. And what we also know about Germany is that the price is transparent, at least at the moment. So it's publicly available. Everyone can see it, which means your competitors can see it, but also other countries can see it. And this international reference pricing is really the biggest crucial point about German pricing, because if other markets see that you're willing to only pay or receive that amount from German payers, then they say, why would the French payers pay more, the Italian payers more? Some markets that even are less economically strong, they might say, well, we can't really pay that amount. And in Germany, you're only receiving that amount, so therefore we want 20% discount on the German price, for example. So really having a price in Germany impacts the rest of the world, really, because that price is publicly available. Because of that, there's now also the idea to make German prices confidential. And I've recently given a webinar on that, and that's also available on YouTube. So we can look at that there, or I come out on here again to explain that. But this is just a draft law, so it's not in place yet. But the idea is to make German prices confidential, to not have this impact on the other markets. And really that happened because we've seen market withdrawal or not even launches on the German market because of these new pricing rules. So the manufacturers thought it's not really attractive to have my product on the German market because I won't get the price that I want. And then all the other markets can see that price. And therefore, I might not get the price I want in the other markets either. So I'd rather not have any sales in Germany, but then have sales in the other markets at a higher price point. And that obviously means it's not really good for the German patient population because they can't receive those products. And those were oncology products, for example, as well. So it's not products where you have a lot of alternatives. It was really specific and big names that withdrew from the German market. So that's why they thought maybe confidential prices would resolve that problem. But there was a lot of feedback on this idea, and it seems that law might not actually come to fruition. So we will see what happens about that in the future. But I think, a lot of the problems in Germany and the trends are about prices coming down, not really being able to achieve the prices that you traditionally did. So traditionally, Germany was one of the first markets to launch because you have the free pricing when you launch. You have reimbursement from day one. As soon as you launch on a German market, it's reimbursed. So it was always very attractive, but now with the pressure on the prices, it's probably becoming less and less attractive.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive information about Germany. As you said, Germany is in the hardcore of the healthcare system and also health economy in Europe. So even though we are not as country, not directly referencing Germany as a reference price from a reference price perspective, but still, if it is reimbursed in Germany, if it is in the reimbursement system, what is the funding level is always so important for the rest of the world, especially in Europe. So that's why everybody, I'm sure, in this sector are really just following the news and upcoming trends in Germany is so close. So I'm just hoping that we will be in the future, in our next videos, we'll be sharing more in detail when we have more comments and questions from the audiences. And in the meantime, I have one final question. So I would just ask, what are the new challenges for market access teams in Germany on the horizon?
So that's probably linked back to what I've discussed, which is really the increasing pressure on prices or increasing cost containment. So really the overall challenge is staying up to date on the German market and all the law changes, what that are happening and how that might impact you as the manufacturer. And overall, there is even more pressure to get a considerable or a major additional benefit because that's the only one where you have free negotiations still. So designing your trials correctly or so that they will be accepted by the GBA, which means having the comparator that the GBA wants, having patient relevant endpoints that are accepted by the GBA, for example, having data on the subgroups that might be applicable in a German HTA. So really all of these are crucial to get an additional benefit, and then also actually being able to show the effect size that would qualify for a considerable or a major additional benefit. So what I would recommend definitely is always to have a consultation with the GBA, for example, ideally before you sign off your phase 3 trial, to ask them about comparators, endpoints, and so on, to really design your trial so it will be HTA ready and it will qualify for an additional benefit at the German level. So I think that's one of the key challenges, really, to get the trial data right. So then you can achieve a considerable or major additional benefit, and therefore you can have free price negotiations. If that is not the case, if you already know the price will be linked to a comparator, again, identify early what the comparator might be, and then do your price calculations and really do some forecasting scenarios. For example, what would that mean in terms of the price that I achieve in Germany? What would be the impact on other markets? And really think about your strategy there. Right. So those new challenges, I think they're really linked to what I've just described before in terms of the cost containments or the price pressure that Germany is now putting on the German prices. So overall, it's remaining up to date, remaining on top of the German system. What are all these law changes and how are they impacting me as a manufacturer? So that's one of the key challenges. And as I've mentioned before, there's even more pressure now on the additional benefit. So the additional benefit is now strictly linked to the price. So it's really designing your trial so you can achieve a considerable or a major additional benefit is key. So you want to get the trial data right, and you want to have the right comparator or the one that the GBA would be choosing. You want to have patient relevant endpoints because only those are accepted by the GBA. And you want to have data on the right subgroups, for example, on the right patient populations that the GBA defines when they look at your product. So really, overall, what I always recommend to manufacturers is, if you can, have a GBA consultation, ask them about comparators, subgroups, endpoints, for example. And ideally, you do that before you sign off your phase 3 trial, so you still have a chance to make some adaptations. If you can't do it before, and then at least do it while the phase 3 trial is ongoing, and you can see how you can analyze the data so you can get the most out for the German assessment, and to get it not only ready for regulatory approval, but ready for the German HTA as well. Because it will be critical to get a major or a considerable additional benefit so you can have free price negotiations not linked to the appropriate comparator cost. If you already know that your product will not achieve that additional benefit, then at least identify what the comparator could be and what the prices of that are, what that might mean in terms of your price, and then do some scenario analysis, some price forecasting to assess what might be the price that I achieve in Germany, how many sales will I have, how does that impact the other markets, and what is the best strategy really to go about that. It might even mean that you think about different launch scenarios. So if you have several indications, for example, you might want to see, is there an indication where I can achieve a better price or a higher additional benefit first, and maybe launch with that one first on the German market rather than any other indication. So those are just some scenarios that a manufacturer should think about in terms of the German system and the changes that are happening there. But something I hadn't mentioned before, and it's really, really a big new challenge for market access teams, and that's not just about Germany, it's for all of Europe, is EU HTA, or joint clinical assessments. And we know that they are starting next year already, 2025, for oncology products and ATMPs. And then orphan drugs will come a few years later, and then all the rest will also be applicable from 2030 onwards. So really, it's affecting everyone. And we don't really know yet how that all works out. So we know that it's mandatory, or that the joint clinical assessment should be used by the national bodies as well. So there will be a joint clinical assessment which runs in parallel with the regulatory approval. And then this joint clinical assessment report should be used by the national HTAs. So it should also be used by the GBA. We know that the GBA is heavily involved in developing this methodology for the joint clinical assessment. So hopefully there should be some overlap between that. But we still don't know if the joint clinical assessment, for example, will give all the details that the GBA needs. very likely you will also have to have a national submission with additional information that the GBA needs. So that's really another challenge for market access teams, because you really have to do basically everything in parallel. There is regulatory approval that happens at the same time as the joint clinical assessment happens at the EU level, and you need to prepare for the national HTA as well, so for the submission to the GBA. Because really, like we said before, the national decision starts at the time that you launch on the German market, which can happen as soon as you have regulatory approval. So there are a lot of parallel work streams that need to happen all at the same time. And that really puts a lot of strain on market access teams. So you want to probably get some support or get some consultancies involved, or have some independent people to help you and support you alongside figuring this all out. But it's only happening next year, so we haven't seen one example yet. So we don't really know how the GBA will use that information that they have from the joint clinical assessment. Really, the idea is that there should be no duplicated work. So whatever is covered in the joint clinical assessment should not be covered again in the national HTA. But we know that GBA has many specific requirements. They might have different comparators than other markets have. They might have different subgroups that are not covered at the EU level, for example. So there might be a lot of additional information that is needed at the German HTA level. But all it's to say is be prepared for that. Plan your resources so that you have enough support in place when you need it. Look at the timelines for your products. When are you likely to launch? Will you fall into these categories? The first one that's starting next year, or maybe later on. If you're later on, follow closely what happens to the other ones that go first and see how that really impacts the outcomes there. And yeah, that's all I can say at this point, is watch the space about joint clinical assessments. I should mention as well, there is consultations as well. So you can ask for joint scientific consultations, but it doesn't seem to be guaranteed that you will get a slot. So they seem to have limited slots for high priority products, for example. So you can apply and then they pick the ones that they offer the consultation to. You still can go for the national GBA consultation, which I always recommend. Like I said before, always do that to at least find out what the German HTA body would say about your data and how to present it best to get the best outcomes in Germany.
Thank you very much. What I can say is, from the GDP perspective, when we are looking to Europe and Germany, we are always expecting the budgets for healthcare would be like higher and bigger, but it's everywhere globally. There is the austerity measures that is set everywhere. So it's always the budgets are getting narrower, prices is getting more important. So it seems as if there's going to be many things coming up for Germany market, and there will be many things for the market access teams to do. So thank you very much for all these insights and experiences that you shared. And also, I think it's very insightful for the teams to be ready. And what I can say from the as a consultancy perspective, we are more and more hearing the importance of the early preparations and simulations that can be done with the help of the consultants or the people that is on the field. Thank you very much, Anja. I would like to be having you again as a guest in our video series. Hopefully to meet you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.